Right now we have Drew Sullivan joining us, editor and I believe co-founder of the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, who was here this past weekend for Materia Fest. So first of all, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here, Josh.
So my first question is, what's your reaction to Poroshenko's response to the so-called non-existent offshore scandal?
Well, he can call it anything he wants, not a scandal. But the bottom line is that a sitting president is not addressing serious questions about an issue he has said he's very interested in, which is offshores, and he has not provided information to prove that he hasn't done anything illegal. And Slidstvo and OCCRP, I think, has done a good job raising issues with documents that appear to show an opposite thing. So they can say anything they want, but they should release the documents to the people so that they know exactly what went on. There's no reason not to.
But so with saying anything they want, there's sort of, after the second investigation, the one that specifically alleged some sort of possible criminal wrongdoing, there was a surprising lack of reaction, I thought, in the Ukrainian press. What was your impression of that? Why do you think that it didn't make as much of an impact as one might have expected? Well,
I think people, when you start making serious allegations, people kind of stop and say, wait, let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. And it's a complicated issue. And it has to do with, how people interpret Cyprus documents. It has to do with tax law in Ukraine. So I think it's a complicated issue, and you have two sides that are talking. We're trying to talk with facts, and it's, on the other side, it's being brushed off a little bit, saying this is not important. And I think it's difficult for readers and viewers to really understand what's happening.
Sure. And, there's been some pushback within Ukraine, particularly after the first release. There's also been some international pushback we saw this past week in the form of a Politico op-ed written by Adrian Karatnycky, which I think we have a screen of that we can show, which was written, he wrote that many, if not most, of the financial structures whose inner workings have been leaked, including Poroshenko's, represent legitimate, there it is, legitimate and well-established business practices. So calling these business practices legitimate and well-established. I want to hear your response to that.
Okay.
The implication is essentially that you all are making a problem where there isn't a problem to be had. So first of all, could you respond to that suggestion? And second of all, I'd be interested if you could give us some wider context on, maybe perhaps why Karatnycky felt the need to make these allegations. We've seen other things from him in the past.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, Mr. Karatnycky was a strong supporter of Mr. Lukashenko. He was a strong supporter of Mr. Yanukovych. Now he's a strong supporter of Mr. Poroshenko. I think what you're looking at is somebody who is in the business of doing business with government, and it's in his interest to curry favor with the government. The piece was an absolute puff piece that was insulting to Slidstvo and Kyiv Post reporters. It was insulting to the press in Ukraine. It was factually wrong in many different places. It was just a poor piece of journalism from not a journalist, but a registered lobbyist who has represented other dignitaries such as Milorad Dodik, the corrupt president of the Republic of Srpska in Bosnia, and other places. So he has no credibility, I think, on this issue, and he shouldn't be talking. It's embarrassing to Politico to publish that article.
Sure. And you all also released a fairly strongly worded response, I think ending with, if the authors of the article really wanted to challenge the findings our reporters published in their stories, they should begin by reading them. So I'd be interested if you could, if anything comes to mind, some specific factual inaccuracies that existed in that piece.
Well, first of all, they said that the reporters who were working on this were not investigative reporters with experience, and they dismissed them as being, from a developing world country. And, Dmitro and Anna Babinets and Vlad Lavrov are all award-winning journalists, and I think that that's just dismissive. Secondly, they said that we didn't talk to them, which is not true. They dismissed this as a translation error, which is absolutely not true. We have talked to a number of Cyprus lawyers who have said the same thing over and over again, that this is in fact a regular, typical document that says quite clearly cash and in-kind valued assets were sent to Cyprus, which raises the question, is there a bank account, and is the president shipping $4 million offshore? I mean, that's the really serious question. And anything you can do to blow smoke over this is not going to make that question go away. They have to answer that question and show, and there are documents that they have which will prove that, but they're not making them available.
And can you speculate on why they're not making those documents available?
Well, I don't want to speculate. I mean, I think they know why they're not making these documents available, and I think the public is starting to get an idea. And, there are other work that they've done. They've brought in Baker McKenzie and other groups to vouch for the way that they've done things. And even Baker McKenzie has not reviewed those documents. And so consequently, this can be answered if this could be all put in the past if Mr. Poroshenko simply makes those documents available, and he should do that.
So what other Panama Papers investigations regarding Ukraine can we expect? Do you have anything else in the works coming that we can expect to be released over the next few months?
The thing about the Panama Papers is, a lot of that information is really difficult to use. It's offshore correspondence between lawyers about offshore companies that we don't really know what they're doing yet. So there's a whole lot of stories that we still have to do. And in fact, we've got one coming out this week on Mr. Roldugan again, and so in Russia. And so you will see stories coming out literally over the next year on this, and we will find in 5 years from now, reporters will still be referring to the Panama Papers about offshores that they suddenly discovered are involved in some deal, and now it all makes sense because we know what the deal is. In many of these cases, we simply don't know what the deal is.
Just as a sheer archive of information.
It's an incredibly valuable archive.
And I mean, have you all also gotten independent tips of people who may know something that have come to you since the Panama Papers were released?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we get tips fairly regularly, but I mean, I think that people are angry. People are angry. I just toured Mr. Yanukovych's house today, and
right.
in Medjugorje, and it's outrageous that my salary is in a couple wood panels there. I think people are angry at how politicians have used offshores, and a place like Ukraine, where a sizable amount of its economy is an offshore economy, and that really that angers people. And so anytime they see leaks and information that comes out, I think they're going to be interested. And I think you're going to find a lot more people in banks and in registration agents and in other places that deal with these people and see these kind of corruptions going on are going to start making these informations more available.